Guess we'll circle back to Ibushi for a minute. So yeah,
Yeah.
Ibushi announced, well, it was January 31st here, but it was February 1st in Japan, which means that's when contracts expire. In Japan, they typically expire on February the 1st. So Ibushi tweeted, and I'm going to be reading this obviously translated by Twitter. So who knows
And
how
Google and whoever
how
else.
accurate it is. So there could be some lost in translation there, but it was tweeted as there were various conflicts, but thank you to New Japan Pro Wrestling. I chose the position of being free to renew my contract. Thank you for your long and condensed period. Thank you. Again, I'm reading this the way it translated. We know how that happens. From now on, I hope you will watch over my path. I don't know what will happen. So then New Japan responds almost immediately with their tweet. And it says, with the conclusion of his contract period on January 31st, 2023, Kota Ibushi has departed New Japan Pro Wrestling. Ibushi had been recovering from an injury since October of 2021. We apologize to Ibushi's fans for the abrupt announcement and join them in wishing Ibushi the very best in all his future endeavors.
Well, all
So,
right. So don't
um,
let the door hit you.
yeah, it was. I thought that message, and again, I know there's probably some culture barrier and difference, and obviously it's translated. So I just felt that it was a very passive aggressive response from them, especially the line that said, "We apologize to Ibushi's fans for the abrupt announcement." Ibushi's fans knew he was gone. Like, we knew after what happened last year that there was no way, especially all the stuff with his mom, there was no way he was resigning. And
I
again,
don't
it
think
might be a cultural
anybody
thing.
thought he was coming back.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, maybe Japanese fans, maybe some of them did think he was coming
Yeah,
back,
it's
but
that. I mean, it's possible. Like, we do have to hugely consider that, like, the apology may be directed at Japanese fans and not at us, because we
right.
make
It
up a
probably,
much.
yeah, right.
We make them in much smaller portion of their
Yeah,
direct.
exactly.
That's.
That
I
is
mean,
true. Yeah,
we know that from the way that they treat like the North American stuff all the time, and we. I mean, we've
yeah.
talked about it. Others have talked about it, but that's got to be very much a like, hey, he was a disrespectful, but they definitely kind of like it almost came off as like throwing him under the bus. Like, we're really sorry he's such an asshole. And
That's how I took it. And I guess again, that's probably
but you
the
know,
Western
this is
style of
how
reading
he's
it.
been forever, and we wish him well in his future
Right.
endeavors.
Well, and then yeah, because I think Josiah, I think it was like, well, at least it reads better than a WWE
Oh, definitely.
statement. And I was like, well, that is true. But it just basically was like, yeah, it just felt very passive aggressive. And I'm like, we all knew. And I guess maybe it does go back to maybe Japanese fans. Maybe some of them assumed he would come back. But I was like, they watched it play out too with Kota's Twitter. So, and again, I don't know how online some of the wrestling fans there are. So maybe they perceived it differently than Western fans did. But I was like, I mean, we knew Ibushi was not gonna stay after, especially after the stuff with his mother. Like, it was just it was very obvious that he was leaving, or at least that's how I took it. I was like, we were all basically waiting on February 1st because we knew. And especially because he's been more open about talking about Gold Lovers and things like that. So it seemed like he was already, and then he's kind of talked about maybe getting into like the MMA type of stuff there. But we've talked about like, what does Ibushi do, because he's made it clear like that he doesn't want to live in the US, and I'm sure after what happened with his mom, he probably does not want to leave her for extended periods of time. And not that she couldn't come with him, but it sounds like maybe he just kind of does excursions basically, and just comes over here for a little bit, goes home, does his thing there, and then maybe comes back. And it'll be interesting to see, because he's obviously gonna be the most in demand talent out there. I don't think
Well,
there's
I think he tweeted essentially like, I'm open to coming to North America for bookings right now,
right.
like from now until a certain time, like where
Yeah.
he's like, so right now I think he's just like literally just going around getting a bunch of money, like in wrestling
Yeah.
wherever he wants to. And
Right.
at this point, because of who he is and the fact that he hasn't wrestled in a long time, he can wrestle however he wants. I mean,
Yeah, I've heard some people say his
except
style will
someone in
be,
WWE, of course.
but yeah, I've heard that some people were saying, I can't remember where I saw the quote, but they were saying his style will probably be different, just because he's still
Definitely.
having some shoulder injury, so he's probably gonna like. But they made it sound like he was gonna be like more violent and more of a strike. So it sounds like he's gonna be. I was like, so more like Suzuki.
Well, that's
So I mean, I will take that, and maybe he won't land on his neck so much now.
well because they'll be beating the crap out of each other
Somebody was talking about
instead of jumping off of things and doing flips.
Somebody was talking about how I wish I had the tweet on hand, because I sent it a few days ago, but it was saying something about how Ibushi's gonna like have this like match with Speedball, and then he's gonna go to Joey Janela's spring break and light a firecracker in his face.
Yeah.
I was like, that's perfectly encapsulates Kota Ibushi.
Well, I think he thinks that like there is like some conversation with the fact that like he has the feeling of like that was the path that a lot of other really important people like Suzuki, the path they took was that they were part of Pancrase or War or some of the other like he hasn't done death matches traditionally, and he hasn't done like that kind of hardcore match and things like that, and so I think maybe he's testing the waters. I worry because the guy's a little crazy. Like, he's a little crazy. When you see him like striking people, and I mean, he seems like, oh, look at that cute, like little guy. He's so pretty and wonderful. And then sometimes you watch him, and it's like, I mean, we saw him wrestle Naito in the actual and I know they've had that match a million times, but they almost kill each other almost every time they have that match.
And that's how Ibushi does. He almost kills his opponent.
He's very
violent. Like as
reckless.
much as the high flying stuff that he does, which is amazing, and he's flipping off of shit and all that stuff. He is very violent in the ring. He strikes hard. And he kicks very hard. Then you can tell when he gets past a certain point, he just has this look on his face, like his eyes completely changes. He goes to a different place. And he can get in matches, he can get really dark sometimes, which is a little terrifying because sometimes you can see it come across his face. And when that happens, you realize like, it's about to get really bad. He's about to get
he's going to go play the indie circuit where he's doing stuff like GCW. And I mean,
starting off with GCW,
gloves are off, as it were.
Right.
I mean,
right. And I mean, I think Speedball is probably a perfect first opponent for him because Speedball is violent, but not in the same way. I think that's a really good for this to be his first match back, assuming he doesn't wrestle anywhere between now and then. I just think that that's a really good opponent for him. That's why I think like whoever he wrestles at Spring Break may be more of the lighthearted Ibushi type of stuff where he's jumping off things.
Right.
He's using all kinds of like crazy props and things like that. So like I think we'll get both versions of Ibushi.
He is a super smart. I mean, the reason that he's so in demand and the reason that we like he is a super smart wrestler. He's a super talented wrestler. So the reason you want him is because he can do all of these things.
And even if he isn't the same type of Ibushi we saw, the last couple of years, I think that he can, however he presents himself now, I think will still be something that fans enjoy. Like I don't have any fear that he's gonna like be something I'm not interested in. Like I think he's gonna adapt really well. And we actually had, before we came on, we had 2 questions about Ibushi in our comments, so I'm gonna post those real quick and then we'll go back and see the new comments. And then also there was something that came up last night about Ibushi that I saw. So the first question is, do you believe that Kota Ibushi would appear on AEW/New Japan Forbidden Door? If they can work it out, absolutely.
Absolutely. And I hope so, because I want to see that.
For us,
yes,
I want to see it. But Tony Khan has said he would like him to wrestle, even if he doesn't sign a contract, which is fine. He can come he can come and
do
go
a
as he
match.
pleases for all I care. But
Yeah,
I
yep.
think Forbidden Door is where you have, and then maybe that is, so this kind of leads into the next question. Would you like to see Kota Ibushi hold the IWGP US Championship?
Yeah, why
If
not?
I wouldn't mind it, I just don't know if he will because of the connotations with New Japan and everything that how that fell
Yeah,
out.
I
Like
don't
if
think that's gonna
like
happen.
I would, and especially if he's the one to take it off of Kenny, like I think that's a fantastic story, and I think that that would be the way to go. However, I don't know what his relationship is like with New Japan. I don't think he
Yeah.
wants anything to do with them, so I think he would rather probably get another type. I wouldn't mind him, like he would be a really good All Atlantic champion. Like I think that would
Oh,
be a
that's a
really
good
cool. I
idea.
mean, obviously the TNT championship, but that's one that gets defended on TV pretty much every week. So
A lot.
I don't think that he'll do
And
that
they
unless
use it to advance storylines, and I don't think that that's
right. And I don't
something.
think that's where Coda is. So I think the All Atlantic Championship would make more sense for him, especially if he does like Pac and he takes it and wrestles in other companies
Right.
with it. Like then I think that would make more sense. And yeah, I think he would be a fantastic IWGP US champion, but I just don't think he wants anything to do with New Japan. I don't
And
think
they may not want anything to do with him.
right, and they may
And
not
then
want
I
him.
wonder, and then you kind of, that opens up the question of where does that leave AEW? Because if New Japan has a tenuous relationship with
Right.
Ibushi, okay.
Yeah, you want to be careful that you're
You
not
gotta watch.
rocking.
That's a tightrope.
Yeah, that's definitely a tightrope. And then obviously, if there is the Forbidden Door type of stuff, like obviously
Yeah.
Rocky is kind of handling that, and Ghetto are handling that type of thing. So if his issue isn't with Ghetto, but is more with, it sounds like it's more with the Office, type of things. But maybe they tell Ghetto like, I don't care, do not book him for Forbidden Door.
Yeah.
Like I
Right.
don't
Yeah.
want him there. So I mean, I would, if you take the politics out of it, then absolutely. Like I would love to see Ibushi there, but I don't know that we'll get that just because of the politics that's there. There's a lot of hurt feelings there. Ibushi has every right to be upset based on what we know. And so I can see that he may not want to do that. I do think it would be a really great place for him to kind of debut. I don't know if they would debut him before then, because that's what they were kind of doing leading up to Forbidden Door. They were having some matches there. But I would almost just hold him for Forbidden Door if they can. But I don't know that they may not want him involved at all with Forbidden Door, or he may not even want to be because it's New Japan adjacent. So he might be like,
Right.
I'll do my own. I'll come in and wrestle on my own, but not now, or maybe it takes some time. Maybe he waits 6 months or longer and just lets things kind of die down a little bit before he comes and wrestles. I don't know that he would even sign with, I mean, I guess he could kind of do like Sheeta, because Sheeta goes back and forth between Japan and AEW, and she's contracted with both. So he could potentially do something like that. Maybe they could work out a deal with him. But knowing him just coming out of this contract, that may not be what he wants. He may just want to freelance it and just wrestle at all the
Do
indies
what he
here,
wants for a
and he
while.
might go and he might do the UK stuff that like Suzuki's been doing.
He could do like
He could do
Rev
that.
Pro and
Yeah.
OTT and
So Brad said, I wonder if Ibushi will be on the DDT show during
Well,
Collective Weekend. That's where I thought that's probably where he would get
that
announced.
does kind of make sense since it's
But yeah, and I wonder if
old
I
stomping
would think that
grounds.
he would do both shows, but I would definitely think maybe the DDT versus GCW would be a really cool. Brad said he's seen a few people and saying if AEW brings in Ibushi that could hinder Takeshita, do you think that would be the case? AEW fans love Ibushi, but is there enough love for both he and Takeshita? I think maybe depending on when Ibushi comes in, because they're really starting to build Takeshita. Takeshita finally got his first win the other night. He's hanging out with Don Callis, which is interesting, with Don Callis and Kenny Omega, and then Kenny Omega and Ibushi. So that's an interesting little dynamic that may come into play later on. Maybe it doesn't. I hadn't thought about that before. I don't necessarily think it hinders Takeshita, but I could see where that could potentially be an issue.
Although you could totally have them fighting over Kenny. I mean,
who wouldn't fight over Kenny? But yeah,
and they mean that would There's a lot of
Kenny
like,
Omega on a pole match.
yeah, right.
That's what I always joke about
We've
Adam
talked
Cole.
about it. Adam Cole on a pole.
Adam Cole on a pole because he has his boyfriends in in the Elite and in Red Dragon, and Dark Order for that matter. So they could do the same with Kenny Omega on a pole.
I mean, Takeshita already has a lot of AEW homegrown love. So yeah. I think Ibushi coming in from outside, like we've seen that, yes, AEW fans were all really smart. Like we would love it if Ibushi comes on, but you never know, like how big a person's going to get over, and he's been out of the wrestling picture for pretty long time when you think about, because people's recency, I don't think that people in the AEW crowd wouldn't pop like crazy for him. Like that wouldn't be huge, but they have had some times where you would have thought, oh, that guy like should have been over more than he was. And right. I mean, sometimes it's a crowd, obviously, and things like that, but it's tricky because I think there's a lot of love for Takeshita in AEW as an AEW like import. He's one of our guys that came in here and became part of our family thing, and so I think that there's I mean I would feel like it. Ibushi would not crowd out Takeshita for me.
Same. But I can understand why that's
it's a fair question.
I think really also maybe if Ibushi's doing these indie shows prior to coming into AEW, then maybe people then that's kind of where maybe they're like, okay, he is more recent. I do see him more often. I see him doing these things. I see his matches. I see clips of him on Twitter again. And so then maybe maybe that helps him some prior to coming to AEW. But it depends on, I guess,
till like Double or Nothing or something.
I think it depends on like, I think it depends on how they're going to use Ibushi and how often Ibushi is going to be there. Yeah. Because Takeshita is signed to AEW, so he's going to be there long term. Ibushi is likely not going to be all elite, at least not anytime soon. He's probably just going to come in and do some matches here and there. I mean, he'll probably wrestle there more often than Shibata does, but so it's kind of like that type of thing, like where they bring, because Ishii's come in a couple times, so they've done things like that. So I think it just depends on how they book Ibushi and how often he's going to be there, but then you don't want that to overshadow what Takeshita is in the process of building. So like, I think that's a very fair question. And definitely. It just depends on, I think a lot of it comes down to how often Ibushi will be there and what he's going to be there for. But then I also don't want them to do the thing where you have Ibushi and then don't use Takeshita. Because of that, like you can have, like, I don't want them to be like, oh, we can't have two big Japanese wrestlers on here. Yes, you can.
Yes, you can.
But I don't want that to be, or they move Takeshita to Rampage because they've got Ibushi on Dynamite, which is something that could potentially happen. So it's
frankly, they should put Ibushi on Rampage to get the numbers back up.
Yeah, because they've been using.
They're going to do that because they were doing really well, and then they like kind of had a bummer show again, and
like Friday's show was solid, but it wasn't like
it wasn't as good as like the previous like 2 or 3
and
weeks,
even like I was joking about, I was like, okay, it was a solid show, but I don't know what to write about.
Right.
So I was like, I don't know.
Yes.
And like it was and I ended up going,
oh, you had to write about that.
And so it wasn't that bad. We were joking about my
kind of ended.
My editor was like, write about Danhausen cursing Jeff Jarrett, so hopefully he doesn't get it. But I ended up going the route with the outside, with Saraya and Tony doing their best outsiders impression. Which I'm not mad at. But yeah. Oh, and so one thing with Ibushi, I did see, so last night I saw apparently he did an interview and it's been translated it was kind of a condensed thing, but basically he started a YouTube channel because he wants people to get to know him, and he says the real him. And he was like, I want you to see all of the emotions. I'm happy, I'm sad, I'm angry. He's like, well, not angry, but like I want to showcase like all sides of me. And he was like, and I want you to, because he was like talking to the interviewer, and I guess he asked something like, do you think I be the real me right now? And he was like, well, he's like, I don't know. And he was like, I think he said like, I think I am, but I guess he was getting at the point like nobody really knows Ibushi, or the fans don't. And I guess he wants to kind of showcase that, which could be interesting going into like the indie type of stuff, with him doing that. So I think that's really intriguing with what he is doing there. But yeah, so I'm really interested to see where Ibushi goes from here,
Me too.
especially at a post New Japan Ibushi, and an Ibushi who is coming off of an injury that he's been dealing with for over a year now. Like, it'll be interesting to see how his style changes and who his opponents are, because I would imagine he's probably handpicking some people at this
God,
point.
I would think so.
He's probably like,
He
because I'm sure
can.
he pays attention to what's happening. So
Yeah.
he's probably like, for all, I mean, he very likely probably requested to wrestle Speedball.
Yeah.
Maybe he requested, like, maybe they gave him a list of names and be like, who on this list would you like to wrestle? And I could see that kind of being the situation with, I was gonna say that could be the situation with Spring Break as well, but Joey Janela books a lot of dream matches.
Hmm.
So it could have been like, so it'll be really interesting to see, because his opponent could literally be anybody in Spring Break, just because those are where the crazy matches happen. Like, that was where we were supposed to get Suzuki versus Orange Cassidy, and then the pandemic happened, and Joey still has to tell people like that match is not happening anytime soon. And it is the place where I would like to see my dream match of the Juice Juventud Guerrera
Right.
versus the Juice Robinson versus Juicy Finau, and have the juiciest match
The
ever.
juiciest match of all time.
Exactly. So
The
who
juiciest match in the universe.
it of space and time. But yeah, so I'm really looking forward to seeing what Ibushi does. Whether he ends up in AEW or not, I will definitely be paying attention to whatever it is that he's doing.